All right, so if you've been around the internet, you may have heard of this debate, the Berenstain versus Berenstein bear controversy. So just a real quick overview here. Berenstain Bears is children's literature franchise created by Stan and Jan Berenstain and continued by their son Mike Berenstain, who assumed partial authorship in 2002 and full authorship in 2012. The books feature a family of grizzly bears who learn moral or safety-related lessons. It's been around since 1962, and it's grown to over 300 titles, sold 260 million copies, and there's a couple of television shows. The stories follow this basic formula where Papa Bear sets out to instruct Small Bear. When the kids face a problem, they turn to Papa, who offers a solution, and it only makes the problem worse. Then Mama Bear comes, and she sets everything right. And this is kind of one of the beginnings of the trope that's so common now, the incompetent father. You have the Homer Simpson versus the Marge, or the Peter Griffin versus Lois, and it's always the father now that is the buffoon, married with children, whatever. And it's the mother who's wise, the mother who holds the house together, the mother who basically has to do everything for her incompetent husband. So that's one of the genesis of this idea. So their Wikipedia cites this name confusion. They tell us many people incorrectly remember the name of the series as the Berenstein Bears. Okay. This confusion has created multiple theories to explain the memories, including unannounced name change, which seems possible, time travel, or parallel universes, and has been described as an instance of the Mandela effect. According to Stan Berenstein's son, confusion over the name has existed since his father's childhood, when his teacher insisted the name was Berenstein due to the prevalence of names ending in Stein. A few examples of Berenstein spelling have been found in reference to knockoffs of official merchandise and publications and cartoons for the series used an ambiguous pronunciation, which may contribute to the false memory. So we all have a false memory here. And here's another article about it. And they point out, if you don't believe us that it's always been Berenstein, turn to the historical source that is Twitter, because that's a great source for digging things up. The official Twitter home for Berenstain Bears. You can even buy a book called The Big Book of the Berenstain Bears. So here you can see the cover. One article, they argue, it was probably just because as a kid you weren't very good at reading script. And so we were all so bad at reading script that must explain our false memory. So apparently when many fans are made aware of this fact, they can't believe it, remembering for sure that the books they grew up reading definitely said Berenstein on the cover. There are forums upon forums across the interweb on sites like Reddit insisting the name was once Berenstein, and I would be in that camp. You notice this little bit of rhetoric here. One heroic Reddit user, a little bit of sarcasm, came through with pictures proving that at one time there are books that had been printed with the name Berenstein. So you can see right here, Berenstein Bears, Berenstain Bears. So it isn't apparently in everybody's imagination. And then someone else posted a photo of a toy Berenstain bear. And this one is kind of confusing. You look down here. Here, Berenstain bear. And lower on the label it says Berenstain bear. And these labels look pretty legitimate. I mean, that's what old cardboard sitting around, maybe a little bit of moisture or water over a long period of time. This doesn't look like something freshly printed off of somebody's printer. But it's up to you. Here, this individual, Russell Smith, refers to it as a case of Schrodinger's nostalgia. So now we've got some really fancy words to describe it. I want to take note of the date here. It was written August 14th, 2015, and then updated June 5th, 2017. So 2 years later, this article still needed to be altered. It's kind of strange. He talks about the alternate reality theory. So it seems to have started around 2015, where he says it burbled and boiled and peaked and subsided within the space of a few days last week. I assume that's of the writing in August 2015. Thing is, I just heard of this a couple weeks ago and it blew my mind. The theory goes like this. The popular series of books is called The Berenstain Bears, named after their creators, but that can't be right because we all remember them being spelled Berenstein, which means not that we are all wrong, but that their spelling changed at some point in history, a point at which two time streams or parallel realities diverged. In other words, we just jumped the tracks somehow, and the other reality in which they are still called Berenstein still exists somewhere. You might think of them as Schrodinger's bears, simultaneously Berenstain and Berenstein. It's so strange to me, the amount of ink and the amount of time and the fact that there's multiple revisions in the Globe and Mail referring to this name change, and it offers these science fiction-y explanations for what happened. Here's another article. How you spell the Berenstain Bears could be proof of parallel universes. Also in August 2015. So she points out a startling number of people remember it as Stein, and it's actually Stain, named after the authors. Again, after the authors. But it's possible so many people are wrong about the title. And then she goes into this parallel universe argument again. At some time in the last 10 years or so, reality has been tampered with and history has been retroactively changed. The bears were really called the Berenstein Bears when we were growing up, but now reality has been altered such that the name of the bears has been changed post hoc. So another theory posits a time traveler sent back in time to stop the Y2K disaster inadvertently meddled with the Berenstein bear name in the process. But this, he rejects this theory because time travel doesn't actually work this way. Okay. So they conclude human memory is faulty and that we're all just wrong. And I will agree, human memory is faulty, but not everyone all at one time. So this is an interview with the actual son. He says, "Don't be ridiculous. It was always spelled Berenstain," says son of series creator. This was also written August 12th, 2015. So they came out in force with these articles. So they spoke with Michael Berenstain, and an attempt to make sense of it all, National Post, Jake Edmiston spoke with Michael Berenstain. So he says, "First, tell me how you pronounce your last name." And Michael Berenstain says, "It's Berenstain, like coffee stain or jello stain or wine stain." And the interviewer asks, "You're absolutely sure?" And the response is this going to be like a satirical interview, or are we doing a straight interview? Little snarky sarcasm. The questioner responds, no, sorry, I was just kidding. He says, okay, I thought we were doing a kind of interview where you were challenging whether I knew how to pronounce my own name. No, forgive me, that's how you pronounce it, but this isn't the first time it has come up. So they go on, he explains the confusion. He says that this has been going on his entire life. And so the questioner eventually asks him, how did the Berenstain name come to be? It's a immigration officer's attempt at phonetically spelling an accented version of the traditional Jewish name Berenstein. So there you have Berenstain. You're not totally crazy. My great-grandparents were Ukrainian Jews who immigrated to the U.S. in the late 19th century, fleeing the pogroms and persecution of the Jews in Ukraine at that time, and they pronounced the name with a Slavic-colored pronunciation. They pronounced it something like, and I can't even attempt this, Berenstain. The family tradition was simply that Berenstain was an attempt to phonetically spell that particular pronunciation. So that's the son's explanation. He blames Dr. Seuss, comically. So what could be another explanation other than parallel universes or time travel? Well, I would say money is one of them. The Berenstain bears convert to born-again Christians and apparently cause a national meltdown. This is a year later than all the other articles, but this person thinks this is terrible news. We have some rather disturbing news. The Berenstain bears have converted to religious, Bible-quoting Christians. The latest installments of the book series for children include The Berenstain Bears, Do Not Fear, God is Near, and The Berenstain Bears Go to Sunday School. The books are being marketed exclusively to the Christian community at Sunday schools, churches, and Christian bookstores. So this guy says this is awful because he's a secular Jew and, Christmas was so traumatic as a child. He identified heavily with the Berenstein bears, apparently, because I always assumed they were secular Jews, just like me. Not a crazy assumption, since one of the creators in the husband-wife team that started the books, Stan Berenstain, was also a Jew himself. So he talks about, everyone read the Berenstain Bears, and not only that, they were beloved, and so this meant a lot to this author. So much so that there was recently outrage over the Berenstain controversy. An entire generation misremembered it. Well, that's possible, but there's other explanations, only to discover the last name was spelled with an A. Many believe the last name was changed only recently. Do you blame me for being so upset when perhaps the most famous Jewish family in America converts to Christianity? I don't know why that's upsetting, but what had changed? So what had changed? The author had. The books since have been handed down to Stan's son, Mike, who was not religious himself, but after receiving numerous letters from Christian children about the books, decided to start writing the books for the readership sect. So is it possible that a Jewish author, to make the books more palatable to the Christian community in the interest of earning more money, would retroactively change the last name to a little less Jewish sounding name, and in order to earn more money? Have we ever heard of a Jewish person changing their last name to appeal to a wider Christian audience and hide their connection to big money? Nah. this guy goes on to lament the fate of the Berenstain bears here. There are plenty of Berenstain bear books that remain untainted. So being Christian is now having a taint. That's kind of insulting. But somehow it feels like something from my childhood has been ripped away from me. I'll miss you, Mama and Papa Bear. That's kind of insane. But I wanted to make this video to weigh in because I ran across something, and of course, you can always argue it's not conclusive, but there is a lot of credibility to the people that claim it is Berenstein, like Ben Stein, the S-T-E-I-N spelling. I was looking at this book here, The War of Art, and it came out in 2002. This is on Amazon.com, so you can do this yourself. And I found it on my Kindle, actually, originally. So you have to select the Kindle version of The War of Art here. And you go down to this Read More. So think of The War of Art as tough love for yourself. Blah, blah, blah. Defeat your resistance. The War of Art identifies the enemy. And click Read More. That every one of us must face. And then it goes down and it shows, a vital gem, a kick in the rear, Esquire. We go down and we go down, and what do we have here? A marvelous help for anybody who has ever encountered the resistance of a blank page, an empty canvas, or an unyielding musical scale. Stan Berenstein, co-creator of the Berenstain Bears. So not only do we have the name of the author here spelled wrong, we have the name of the book supposedly spelled wrong as well. So you can look this up for yourself. Just look up The War of Art, the Kindle version, on Amazon.com, a book going back to 2002, and you can see that you're not crazy for thinking that it's spelled Berenstein. So I don't know how else to show this. It seems a little ridiculous, but there's a raging debate online. And I ran across this, and I can't find it online, but I found it on my Kindle. I was looking at this book, The War of Art. And I was looking down here at, let's see, where did it go? Down here, under the description, The War of Art, tough love for you and yourself since 2002. War of Art has inspired people around the world. Show more. Okay, and here it goes on a big long explanation of what the book's on. And then we start getting some reviews. Let's see. Ellen DeGeneres, book pick. Esquire. Let's see. An NPR commentator. But this is the one that jumped out at me. A marvelous help for anybody who has ever encountered the resistance of a blank page, an empty canvas, or an unyielding musical scale. Stan Berenstein, co-creator of the Berenstain Bears. And there's articles all over, they swear up and down it's the Berenstain Bears, and that's what they're selling it as. But you can see here a book that goes back to 2002. Apparently it's a little harder to cleanse the Kindle than it is to cleanse the internet. But here you have it. Your memory is not gone. We're not in an alternate reality. It is Stan Berenstein, and it is the Berenstain Bears.